dressed after this hairdresser.
All right, we're going to go ahead and continue with this afternoon's NASCAR pre-race meet availabilities. We are now joined by Brad Keselowski, driver of the number 6 RFK Ford, and Chris Buescher, driver of the number 17 RFK Ford. If you have a question for either of these gentlemen, please raise your hand. We will get a wireless microphone to you. Who would like to start us off?
Pat Jaggers, Motor Racing Network. When you guys think about just the lack of track time when it comes to when you go to qualify, how has qualification, how's qualifying evolved?
Go ahead, Chris.
For here specifically, week in, week out.
Just week in, week out.
Yeah, I mean, at least now we got laps on a lot of these tracks. It's certainly quick, 20 minutes. Fortunately, we have a lot of SMT data to go through. It turns into a lot of your practice time that used to be on track is now spent studying, trying to prep and be ready for those handful of laps. I think the next part of it is, our adjustments are just extremely limited. So the same really can be said for our teams, where our setup development is not done at a racetrack near as much now as it is back at the shop, back on simulation, and trying to be prepped to where we can get to where we need to be within the tight parameters that we have our practice day now.
Just to follow up on that, when it comes to like pit lane selection, how important is it to be able to unload and have speed? When it comes to pit lane selection, how important is it to have speed during qualifying?
Yeah, I think he's asking how important is speed in qualifying for pit lane selection. Well, I mean, week to week it varies. Last week I thought it was critically important. The way Darlington played out with the first pit stall and the proximity that it had to the timing lines in the pit out line, just such a significant advantage. And then I think we see other tracks where, it's not a big deal. It seems like Daytona and Talladega and those places, the way it plays out there, it's not a factor in the race. So week to week, I think it varies significantly. Obviously, you always want to qualify well. There's nothing bad about qualifying well, usually. Although we had that race at Atlanta this year where the 22 car started a lap down, and it was the best thing that happened to them. So usually qualifying well is a good thing, and pit stalls are one of the reasons why.
Additional questions? We'll come up front to him.
Just yell at us, guys, really loud.
Matt Weaver, Sportsnaut. Start with Brad. Being here at Wilkesboro short track, this place was an endangered species for a while. As intermediates become more the better racing we have right now, are short tracks becoming more of a endangered species? Could they be at risk of going away?
Yeah, it's always interesting to see, at least from my perspective, Matt, how the racing evolves. And there's all these kind of lagging indicators. When you think about the schedule and the races, it's like it takes the schedule 3 to 5 years to catch up with the racing, maybe even longer sometimes, where you're like, oh, this type of racing is excellent. We should have more of these types of races. And inherently, our racing seems to evolve for whatever reason in those time spans. And what might be a good racetrack for us competitively changes. And, I think I would go back to the start of the next-gen era when we were coming off the Gen 6 era. And the mile-and-a-half races were probably less compelling than the short-track races. And I feel like when we went to the next-gen race car, that completely flipped, where the short tracks are now, or the mile-and-a-halves are more compelling than the short tracks. And so it's funny how that dynamic works. I'm almost positive with my experience in the sport that will evolve again. And it'll evolve to where, eventually the short track racing seems to be really, really good, and the mile-and-a-half racing not as good. And by then, we'll have evolved to having more mile-and-a-half races. So it just always seems to be a struggle to get the schedule in step with the racing and how it works as far as the most compelling events for whatever reason. And I think that puts more emphasis on the moves that NASCAR has made, and even SMI to some extent, of going private with the tracks, so that that time cycle can be more in tune with the racing that you see and what's more prevalent. I think you're going to see that in the years to come get utilized perhaps in a more equitable way. But it is interesting right now to see our circuit and schedule, you know, and the mile and a halfs being so great. I mean, I don't know how you can argue that the mile and a half racing isn't the best racing in NASCAR right now. And, you know, 3 years ago, if I'd have told you that, you'd have probably laughed, right? So it's funny how that just shifts so quickly. And it's so important for our sport to be nimble, to be able to adapt and really capture that.
And then for both of you guys, with the in-season tournament being made official, an actual part of the program next season, is the $1 million enough incentive, or should there be some sort of playoff points incentive towards even making that more important?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't think it's going to change what we do week in and week out. It is going to be another storyline and something we can talk about and you know, lean into at times. But I don't think it's going to change how we show up to the racetrack at any point during that timeline. I think we're showing them to figure out how to win races. Yeah, there's obviously $1 million is significant.
But it's not for us, right? It's for whoever wins the bracket. Or is it for the driver? How's this thing? I don't know how it works.
I actually don't know that either. So
it's not for us, is it?
I don't know. So even if it was,
Where's
I
Bob?
think there's.
It goes to the team? Oh, I thought it went to like a gambler.
In case you're both.
Oh, well, this might change my answer.
There you go.
Oh, okay, that's good. Now, to the driver or the team.
Yeah.
All right, so you get like $100,000. I get the well, that's going to get negotiated in some driver contract. I thought it went to a fan. Oh. I have no idea how this works.
So we've actually had this conversation this week. Neither of us gamble, and so this is kind of uncharted territory for me and Brad.
I thought it was a gambling thing.
I did too.
Hey, look, we can only race 1 year at a time, and that's next year. So I have no idea about isn't it next year? It's not this year. Okay. Whew. Wow.
We're going to the racetrack to win races every week. So where I'm at, I don't know how it changes your initial look on the weekend or how you approach it. I guess if may change if you end up in a strange situation, damage, laps down. You may work a little harder knowing the situation. You could certainly see Daytona, Atlanta, something like that. If there's some of that in the bracket, I have no clue.
So it's kind of like a Winston Million for the whole field. Is that kind of okay? Can I say Winston? Is that okay?
You can say it here. Yeah.
I can say it. Yes, thanks. I definitely should be able to say it here. Clearly, we have a lot more studying to do. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but I thought it was all just like a gambling thing. No. All right. Well, we don't gamble, so it shows you what we know. But I mean, I still want to win it now that I know I can win it. But being that it's a year from now, it's kind of like, okay, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. A lot can happen in a year.
Go to Dustin Long.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Brad, you were talking about evolution of the sport. Look, through the years, we've seen a fan vote winner here. We've seen stages in the sport. We've seen all sorts of changes in the sport, and obviously the in-season tournament next year. For you guys who grew up both just racing at local tracks without the gimmicks or these types of things, what are the adjustments, or what are where's the line in that this, while sport is entertainment's important, where's that line where it crosses and it starts to go a little too far? And how do you know that?
I'd say I'm part of that. I mean, I ran heat races, local racing growing up, right? So, that was actually a throwback to more of your grassroots type of racing for me. I don't. We've gone a little bit beyond that in some ways, and I know we're staring at. Well, they're all black from this side, but I know one of those is red and yellow, and we have different options to give a go
That's
here.
red.
That's red.
Yeah,
okay,
that's red.
So that's speed. That's endurance. Is our guess here,
And that's wet.
no go. That's no go. And I guess with that, I mean, it's opening up opportunities for this race. Perfect example. Give us an opportunity to go try something. I think we actually tried heat races on the Xfinity side probably close to 10 years ago, didn't we? At one point there, and I actually enjoyed that, but also I remember Bristol. There is a fear of getting something wadded up and not being able to continue on in your primary really can mess up your year-long outlook on it just by doing that. So it's a little tricky in that sense. And heat races growing up a lot were to make sure that we established a field and sent home 40% of the cars that were at a racetrack. For us, we're all on track, and most always we're all making the race. So it has a little different purpose here, I guess, and it becomes a little bit more of an entertainment value. But I don't see anything wrong with a lot of it to keep entertainment up and keep us searching for different strategies and different ways to go about our weekends.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a better answer. That was really good.
Okay, let's go back to Chris Weber, and then we'll come up to Steven.
Chris with Fox 8 WGHP in High Point. Talking about the money thing a minute ago, somebody at a fan event asked Michael McDowell how much money he made, and his answer was a little more than Todd and a little less than Brad. You had come off the stage right before him back at Dover. He says he thinks the money stuff should be opened up, that we should know what drivers make. We should know some of the contract details like some of the other sports. How do you fall on that idea?
You want to take this one?
Yeah,
I
I'll
don't
take
know.
that. I mean, generally, I'm a fan of transparency in all aspects of my life. So I think I'm a fan of that stuff being more public. It's not, and the way the sport is structured, the drivers work for teams as independent contractors in most cases, and that creates contracts that, for a number of reasons, tend to be more private in nature. I wouldn't have an issue at all with that stuff being more public, personally, as long as it was public for everyone. That makes sense to be public for one person and not for everyone. And so I don't know if I would say that's like the number one thing for our sport to be working on. Probably wouldn't prioritize that. But it does. Transparency is generally a good thing in my eyes.
I guess to add a little bit to that, I feel like when I was a kid watching on the couch, and I may be way off base in this, but it used to be advertised a little bit more what purse was for a weekend, where everything paid out, and I know we really don't know that. This is the one weekend where we actually talk about it. I think we talked about it at the 500 this year because it has exponentially grown as an event, but you really don't talk about it on the race side of things either. It's not really, like Brad said, it's not at the top of our minds, I guess, most times, until you put it on the billboard that it's $1 million to win this weekend.
Yeah, most of us are, we're incentivized to win by money. Don't get me wrong. I don't ever want to leave the impression that we're not. But for the most part, I think most of the drivers are incentivized by pride, probably a little ego, maybe a lot of ego in some cases. And the money is just, it's a complement to that. But I don't think, I can't speak for everyone. I don't think it's a primary factor in what race car drivers at this level compete for.
Okay, let's come up to Steven.
Steven Toronto, CBS Sports. I'll pose this question to both of you. Since we're back in North Wilkesboro, last year there was so much made about this track being resurrected, brought back from the dead, what have you, and there was really a celebratory kind of collegiate atmosphere and feeling surrounding that. Now we're back here for the second year in a row. we're going to be back here for the All-Star race next week. But what is it like to be back in North Wilkesboro, knowing that now it's moved from this long-lost speedway to being a place that we race, a place that we go regularly again?
Yeah, so it's kind of neat. Sitting here right now, actually, me and Bailey Curry, who's out there in a truck right now, came up here and volunteered when Dale Jr. was asking for volunteers to come clean up this place when it was at its absolute worst. And I remember that pretty clearly, walking into this room and it looking like a post-apocalyptic war zone. Gurneys flipped over across the floor, medical equipment just thrown out, trashed. I mean, just rough. So to see where it came from for last year, understanding, seeing what the surface did, how it changed, and into a repave for this season, and getting the news that we're going to be here beyond. It's really exciting to see some, from way back when I used to be watching on TV. I don't know that growing up if I ever got to watch a race live or on TV that was current year at North Wilkesboro. It's just we haven't been here in a really long time, so it's been special to be a part of coming back and a minuscule part of helping that cleanup day, just to see it have the potential to come back on online and be a part of our schedule. So it is really neat to see where it's come from, to see it stick to its roots, and Marcus and their group working so hard to make sure that it has a lot of that nostalgic feel to it, so that we can keep true to what it was too.
Brad, you were watching Brendan Queen pretty intently. Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, he ran the late model race here last year and kicked our butts. So I'm just glad he's getting an opportunity. I haven't seen cars on the track here since they repaved it, so we're all eager to get back to the hauler and watch some truck practice.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, Brad, thanks so much for coming in and spending some time with us. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.